The Inner Game Podcast. Brought to you by the Science of Excellence. Presented by Rob Hume, the leading elite athlete mental performance coach. Unleash your power.
Boom. So here we go. Welcome onto the Inner Game Podcast, Neah Evans. Today we have a GB Olympic cycling star, a silver medalist in the most recent Tokyo Olympics, a silver medalist in the World Championships, 2 times bronze medalist in the World Championships, and also a 5-time European gold medalist winner. So coming onto the show today is somebody who has achieved an incredible amount in her sport, who has certainly flown the flag for Great Britain over the years. So thank you very, very much for coming on and giving up your time, Neah.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I'd just like to rewind back in time, if this is okay, and I'd just like for you to discuss how you actually got involved in cycling. How did your journey in this sport begin for you?
So I am slightly unusual in that I got into cycling pretty late. When I was a child, if you like, I was into horses and horse riding, and then went to university and started running, especially hill running. And then my final year of university, I was injured, and my dad cycled, and he always said you'd be better at cycling than running. And it was one of these ones of I went, yeah, Dad, whatever. What do you know? Cycling's rubbish. And then, yeah, I discovered that I could cycle when I couldn't run. And it was one of those kind of moments. I was like, oh, right, cool. This is all right. I'll do it, and I'll keep my fitness, and then I'll go back to running. But he convinced me to go to a track accreditation session on the velodrome, and I did it. And yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but he was right. I absolutely loved it. Just the speed and the excitement of the velodrome. I fell in love with it. So I was at my final year of university, so I was 24 at that stage, and I guess I've been really fortunate in just came across the right people at the right time who've helped me, and I had a pretty rapid progression. So from having never ridden a fixed gear bike, I didn't really know cycling in 2014 to 2017, I got into the British cycling kind of Olympic program.
Wow. And
then, got to the Olympics. I was going to say in 2020, technically 2021, but we'll go over that point. But yeah, it's been quite a whirlwind getting into the sports and just the progression. I definitely, when I first started out, I had no expectations of this is where I'd end up. And yeah, I've been very fortunate.
Yeah, I mean, just listen to that transition that you made from, for a long period of time and long period in your life, you were a runner, and then kind of in a moment, it's kind of flips on its head. And then, as you say, I find it quite remarkable, really, that in what 6-7 years you've gone from from where you were as a runner and then achieved all what you've done in quite a very short period of time, really.
Yeah, relatively speaking, especially, you look at some of my teammates and they've been racing since they were, I mean, there was one girl who was on the squad, and I think she'd done an international race age 10 or something. It was just so far away from what I had done.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think to do sport, you've got to start at a young age and find your sport. That's it. And you've got to give it your whole life. And I'm much more along the be active, be involved, if you find a sport you love, stick with it. Absolutely. But if you haven't found the right sport, it doesn't mean that you're not sporty. It just means you haven't found the right one yet.
Yeah.
And even if you think you found the right one, don't rule out something else. Because I really thought, I like hill running. This is good. This is my sport. And I was wrong.
I with the work that I've done over the years as a teacher, that's certainly something that I've always tried to stress across to my students who have shown a lot of ability in one sport, and then for whatever reason something hasn't quite worked out, and this often happens with a lot of footballers, but they tend to be so physically able in other areas that if they could have just taken that drive and motivation and put it into a different sport, and I've got absolutely no doubt that there's a lot of kind of wasted talent that kind of gets discarded from football, from rugby, who could have gone into something else. And I remember bumping into a lad who I used to teach who was a very good footballer. He played for Huddersfield Town, and I always got involved in the athletics team because he was a very good sprinter, and I kept trying to push him, do this alongside the football, do it. And he just wouldn't. He only wanted to go down the football road. And then, unfortunately, in year 11, he then got released. And I randomly, I actually ended up making connections with him about 6-7 years later, because I'd started cycling and he'd randomly started cycling, just doing like sporties and things like that. And
yeah.
I think he'd seen a segment that I'd done on Strava. Then he sent me a message saying, I've got a faster time here, or something like that. And,
you got to love some Strava competition.
Yeah. So and then we had a few messages, and he said in that he wished he'd listened to me. He wished that that he had transitioned into something else, whether that had been athletics. Obviously, then found his passion in cycling, but if it started that bit earlier, maybe he could have gone further within cycling or athletics. So I think you're a great example of that, of showing promise and having a lot of passion in one sport, but that's not to say that you can't then drive it and put that energy and desire and passion to succeed into something else.
I think absolutely, because it's one of these of a lot of the attributes to be a professional sports person, they're not exclusive to one sport, they transfer across. So it's trying to find the sport that A, you enjoy, and B, suits your physiology. I mean, I'm fairly short. I'm never going to be a basketball player. As much as I could love it, it's never going to work for me. Whereas as a cyclist, it doesn't matter that I'm pretty short. So it's pretty fortunate that I actually enjoy riding my bike. But it's one of these things of, it depends, if you're doing it for pleasure, then it doesn't matter if you've not got the physiological kind of attributes for that sport. But if you want to make it a career and succeed in it, obviously you need to make sure that your sport suits you, no matter how much you love it and enjoy it. If you don't have the right physiology, you're never going to achieve your potential. And then it's going to lead to this huge amount of frustration and disappointment. And it then jades all sport and all kind of competition from that. Whereas if you'd maybe found a different sport that suits you better, you'll fall, you'll enjoy the process so much more, because you actually, can improve and reach your true potential.
Definitely. And obviously when you do find that sport, then, you start to get that success, and, we all love success. It feels good, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
The momentum then starts to build in that respect. Actually, I'm getting a lot of, rewards from this. People are telling me I'm good. You're doing success. Your results are showing that you're getting better. And so I'd imagine for you, that was one of the big drivers for you that helped you transition from running to cycling, is the fact that you was able to see some success from it. And that probably helped you even more to then go, let's kind of go all in on this.
Yeah, I think because when I first started, I really had no ambitions, no targets. It was just to keep a bit of fitness. And then it was, right, I really enjoy this. And then there was the BUCS, the British Uni College Sport, and Glasgow Uni said, oh, will you do it for us? And I'd never done a bike race. I didn't freaking clue what I was doing. And I did it, and I was like, oh, this is really fun. And actually, I came away with a couple of medals, no idea how, running fitness, but nothing to do with my bike riding ability. And I was like, oh, that was quite fun. And then there was, oh, like, this is the British champs, you know, maybe you could try and do someone's looking for a team sprint partner, and it's like, oh, maybe we could try and do that. And so it was like, that was the next kind of target. And then all of a sudden it was, oh, I could actually try and see if I could get on the Scottish cycling program, and then I get supported. So that was in the next target. And then it was like, oh, you know, I'm doing pretty well. Maybe I could get to the Commonwealth Games. And then that was like the next big target. And in the process, I got picked up by British Cycling. But it's always been kind of, you know, when I first got on a bike, I didn't go, right, I'm going to try and get to the Olympics. It was, well, this is fun. Let's see how far I can take it. Really? And kind of every goal that I've kind of set myself so far, you know, in the big scheme, if you like, I've achieved. And then I've gone, right, what's the next one? And yeah, at one point you suddenly realize, right, you know, the Olympics is a goal, and you think that's pretty cool. And now hopefully going to the targets to go for Paris. And that, I think that's it, of always having a goal and something that you're working towards and aspire for. It's not just, you know, the results for every competition you do, it's the bigger goal. I think it really helps kind of motivate and drive direction and the forward momentum, if you like.
Definitely, yeah. You know, we all, you know, whatever walk of life that we're in, whether it's in sport or just generally, we need to have goals. We need to have targets, don't we? You know, something to aim for. But I also think something to come out from your journey within sport is about having that target, but also being flexible within that and not being too kind of like constrictive that it has to be this. You know, because that I guess that could have led you to keep pursuing down one road. You know, in my head, my target is to be this runner and achieve these things in running. But I guess as long as you can maintain that flexibility, then it leaves you open to be able to, you know, take on board, you know, new experiences and new opportunities that come your way as well, because you can't plan for everything, can you?
Oh, absolutely. And even, you know, it's one of these of, we're sitting here and talking about the success of my journey and how nice it's been. It's not been easy. It's not been straightforward. There's been lots of hiccups and things. But it's when you can almost, you zoom out and you see the overall projection has been a really positive one. And, you know, it's been a wonderful process to be part of. But I'll tell you that there will have been days where I'm going, why am I doing this? This is awful. You know, results weren't what you wanted, power numbers aren't there, or what, you know, you just feel your form's not there, whatever it is. And it's kind of going, right, look at the bigger picture, take a step back. Training's not working for me. What can I do? How can I reset? How can I, you know, get to where I want to be? You know, you go and you race and you don't achieve the result you think, you know, you deserve for the, you know, for the training that you've kind of done, and you put all this work in, and you kind of go, right, I've not got what I wanted from that. What can I do? How can I improve things? And it's that constant looking for improvements and striving. You know, you don't rest on your laurels, if you like. Yeah. It's what's the next gain that I can make? And it might be this really clear process, and it's like this step, and sometimes it's complete curveball, and you think, right, no, I've got to go back to square one almost and build again. So there is a huge amount of kind of flexibility of thinking and constantly trying to adapt to the environment. And, you know, sport, the way the dynamics of kind of cycling and track cycling, it's changing. It always changes. It's never quite the same sport. And you've got to keep up with that. If you train the way, let's say that Vent was running 2020 at the Olympics, they've changed the distance of the team pursuit. So that used to be a 3 kilometer time trial effectively, and is now 4 kilometers. Right. So it's completely changed the event and the dynamics and how the strategy of the race and how we ride it. Yeah. So if I'd never even been a track bike at that point, but if I trained the way that they trained in 2012, I wouldn't make it. Yeah. So you've got to always look at kind of, yes, this is what I'm going to try and achieve, but how is my target? It might actually be a moving target to some extent. Yeah. So having that flexibility of thought is so important.
And one of the other things that I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that happens is that sometimes as well, from one Olympic cycle to the next one, they can literally just remove a full event, can't they, and replace it with something completely different. So what the event that you're number one in, that you're best at, is there, and then for the next one, they go, no, we're not even including that anymore. And I bet that must be really difficult.
Yeah, fortunately it hasn't happened to me. I'm going to say touch wood. Really hope it doesn't. But I definitely know from track cycling, they keep pulling events. There used to be so many more opportunities to race at the Olympics as a track cyclist. Now they're cutting it down. And I think it's, obviously I'm a bit biased because it's my sport, but I think it's a huge shame because it is a really good sport, and it's, they say, oh, it's spectator and trying to keep the interest of the crowds and all the rest of it, but as a sport it's really good because it all unfolds in front of you, and there's such variations in the different events. Definitely. I'd say it's a bit more interesting than swimming, but we'll not start that one. But it's like you look at swimming and they seem to be putting in lots and lots of different events, and they seem to be going, mixed team relay seems to be like really popular, but at the cost of, a different event. And yeah, for individuals who've had their Olympic career curtailed, if you like, because somebody else has decided, no, we're not going to make that sport an option anymore. I feel really sorry for them. And
well, hopefully that doesn't happen to you, Neah.
Fingers crossed.
What it may or may not be your most recent success, but what's your favorite memory from your sport, your career so far?
Trying to think. For me, one of my particularly good performances was the European Championships in, I'm going to get the year wrong, I'm going to say 2020, but I can't remember where it sat with COVID. I think it might have been 2019. Just European Championships in Plovdiv. Can't remember what year. It must have been 2020 because we'd had lockdown.
Right.
We had a World Championships, and then about 10 days later we went into lockdown, and shortly after that we found out that the Olympics were getting postponed, and then there was a huge, is it even going to happen? Are they just going to postpone it? Are they going to cancel it? And a huge unknown around that. And obviously no events in the calendar, absolutely nothing. And we had the European Championships were in November. So we had this amazing time of just training, no racing, no travel, just training, just absolutely no distractions. And it was really interesting coming into it because it then felt so novel because you got on a flight, I hadn't flown since February, and it was just such a bizarre build-up. There were no crowds, no spectators, there was no atmosphere. Your European Championships, and the stands are empty. It's quiet. Well, there's Europop music playing, but it's we'll skip over that. And yet I remember the final, it was one of these kind of Zen rides. It just, everything kind of clicked into place. We as a squad knew what we wanted to, this is the team suit, by the way. So three teammates up there with me. And everything just kind of clicked. We knew our roles, we knew what to expect from each other, and it just flowed really well. And it was one of those kind of, cool. Not been a complete waste of a summer.
And do you think that that performance was able to come, perhaps maybe because there was maybe a little less pressure, a little less expectation, or because you've been able to train in a different way? What's your gut instinct say as to how that came about for you?
I think we as a squad had put ourselves under quite a lot of pressure on the time that we wanted to achieve. We wanted to make a statement of the Olympics have been cancelled, but as a squad we were in a good place. I think it had been the training leading into it, because we've got this platform, Training Peaks, which we put all our training content in. It's got a little countdown calendar, time until event. And normally there's always something and it's not that far off or whatever. Whereas for such a long time, it was this European Championships. There was absolutely nothing else, from the Olympics getting cancelled in whenever it was March, there was nothing. It was this European Championships. So we had so much focus going into this event and everything was building towards it. Because again, we didn't even have any competitions off the back of it. It wasn't like, right, we're going to do this and then in 2 weeks we've got to travel to another event. It was, this is all we have. We are going to optimize it. We are going to make as much of this event and this opportunity as we possibly can. So it worked really well.
Cool. What's most important to you about performing in your sport?
So if we can think from the team pursuit, because it's much more predictable, bunch racing a lot more hectic, probably much more spectator friendly, but a lot less controllable. From the team pursuit, I really enjoy, I was going to say the predictability of it. You can do a lot of planning and be very process based going to the event. Obviously, when you roll off that start line, things happen, things change. You've got to be adaptable. But it's an event you can almost feel in control of.
Right.
You can really prepare. You will know, you can almost count exactly how many pedal webs you're going to do, and then someone will change and you've got so many pedal webs in the front and then they're going to change. And it's very analytical. It's very, fact-based. If you got this CDA and this power, this is how quick you're going to kind of go. And I love it and I hate it. Because, with a bunch race, you can sometimes wing it. You can feel physically not in a great place, but you can have a really good race if you tactically switched on. Whereas with a team pursuit, if you haven't got the form, you can't hide that. It's a very honest event. Yes.
Yeah. So is am I taking from it that one of the things that you like about that is that when you are on form, you kind of, where you're at with things. You can, you can almost future predict kind of relatively how things are going to go based on your form, and that. So, does that kind of give you that self-confidence, if you like, to when you are in a good place, to know that you pretty much can nail it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that confidence of when conditions are good, form is good, you're always striving to go quicker, to go better. So if you've got good, when you warm up and your legs feel good and training's been going well, you go, right, we'll take a 10th off, because we walk to a schedule. It's not just kind of blind luck that we roll up and go, we'll see how we're doing. We pre-plan a schedule, and we get the splits that kind of walk to us. You'll see the coach walking the line. So we will, we'll go in with a schedule. We'll arrive at the competition. We'll have a rough idea from training where we think we'll pitch the schedule. And then quite often on race day, we'll find that we're traveling a 10th or 2 up, and everyone's going, yeah, this is good, let's keep it going. And that's how records are broken, and that's how you go quicker year on year, because you're just constantly pushing it, and it's quite exciting because you go, right, that's what we did last time, can we improve it?
So in your opinion, how much is performance in your sport driven by the physical, and how much of it is mental? What if you could put a percentage on where you feel the physical lies and where the mental side of it lies, what would you say it is for you?
I mean, it is really tricky, because for a layperson, it's obviously going to be like 95% physical and 5% mental. But then when you actually get to elite level sport, and if you're like track cyclists, it's going to shift, and it's going to be more like 70% physical and 30% mental, because you're taking from a kind of smaller pool, if you like. you could be as mentally strong and tough as you like, but if you've not got the physical attributes to do it, sorry, you can't do it.
Yeah.
But then once you have this kind of physical capacity, it then means the mental plays a bigger and bigger role. And you can see super talented people, but they just don't have the right headspace and they can't access their ability, and it's limiting. And I think it's one of these of, you can't have one without the other if you want to succeed, but you've got to have the physical ability in the first place, and then you can start fine-tuning the kind of the mental side of it. But fundamentally, you can be as mentally prepared as you like, but if you haven't got that actual physical ability, it doesn't really matter.
Definitely. How do you have much mental and sports psychology support? How much time is given to the mental and psychological side of cycling within your kind of GB setup?
So we're super fortunate that we actually have access to a psychologist, and yeah, he's brilliant. It's very much riders. It's individual choice how much you wish to engage and how much you utilize him, but it's always nice to know that he's there. And it's one of these things of, I find that you kind of personally, and I've seen other people, you go through peaks and troughs of needing more support. He gives you kind of tools to work on it, and then you go, right, I don't need you now, I'm fine, I'm sorted. And then, you know, there'll be a spanner in the works later down the line, and you go, actually, can we have a chat again? Yeah. And I think that's the luxury that we have this access. So if we feel we would benefit, it's there, and yet it's on our terms, if that makes sense. It's not someone saying, right, you have to go and see a psych, it will make you better, because you have to have the buy-in and the belief, or else it won't make any difference.
Yeah.
Or it won't make a significant difference, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it is a huge area that a lot of people overlook.
I mean that, and that's you know, that's certainly what I found, and certainly what I'm trying to shine a light on with the work that I do. That as you've said there, obviously you can't achieve great things in sport without having physical ability. You know, there's no getting away from that. But I think you touched on something, you know, which struck with me there, about how sometimes, you know, the mind gets in the way and they just can't access their ability. You know, if anxiety, if pressure takes over, or for whatever reason a lack of confidence comes in, you know, that can be and is, you know, a real stumbling block for some athletes. And I think often, you know, a lot of the athletes who I've worked with just haven't been, you know, given access to be able to find out techniques of how to cope with pressure, how to help themselves get into a state of flow where, you know, they're not pushing too hard, where that kind of performance just comes from them in this almost effortless state. And you know, there are so many techniques that athletes can use to help bring them to that state, but if you don't know how to do it, you don't know. And I think you when you were speaking about that performance in the European Championship, you said I think you said something like using a zen like state, and that's a big part of what I do with the athletes who I work with, is helping them get into that flow state where, you know, it's almost close to an outer body experience where, you know, the conscious mind is turned off, and you can just let all that work that they've been doing in their training just kind of flow out of them without having to think critically, what if this, what if that, you know. Because when that happens, when athletes start to overthink, that's when, you know, the mind takes over, and the physical kind of then becomes impinged in some way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think absolutely. It's so easy for athletes. A lot of us are perfectionists, and it's so easy to overanalyze, over scrutinize, to go, oh, if I do that, that might affect something else. And I think when performances go well, it just is natural, it flows, it's relaxed. And I think being in a place where, you know, if you put everything in place so that when you start a competition or whatever the event is, if you feel that you've prepared yourself properly, you can then relax and almost switch your brain off to some extent and just let it flow, let it happen. Is when you haven't prepared, and that's when you kind of get panicky. You think, oh, I need to do this, or I need to remember that, or I need to. It's lack of preparation, and that it's terrible for performance. And then the other thing is, I think this kind of overlooked a little bit of, if you're happy and enjoying your training, you tend to adapt better and improve quicker. And even silly things of, if you feel you've performed well in your training and you're in a good headspace and your head's, you know, you feel you're on the right projection, you're going to sleep better. If you sleep better, you're going to recover better, and you recover better, you can train harder. So it's just kind of, there's so many elements of this, the kind of the elite level performance of actually being able to give everything on that given day. And then there's a kind of lifestyle of, you know, if you're in a good headspace, you're going to live better. And if you're living better and making the right choices around your training, it's only going to enhance it.
Yeah. And like you mentioned something very important there about enjoyment. You know, when athletes start to lose the love, the enjoyment for what they're doing for whatever reason, you know, I found that's been a real barrier to, you know, affecting people's motivation and confidence, and, you know, it has a big knock-on effect because you folks have got to push your mind and body to such kind of, you know, limits that, you know, there's going to be times where it's dark, it's challenging, it's painful, but you got to kind of find a way of enjoying that process. Otherwise, you know, it's not enough, you know, if the enjoyment isn't there, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's I kind of said before, like, everyone has bad days. And if you overall enjoy the sport and what you're doing, you get through those bad days. If you don't, you won't really. And it will eat away at you, and yeah, you won't reach your full potential. You know, some of the sessions we do are so painful and so grim, like on the turbo. And yeah, I love them because it's like, I know this is really going to help my performance. And yet 10 minutes before, if you said, do you want to do this or not? I probably go, oh, probably not. I'm not going to enjoy it. But the overall goal, and then the satisfaction and the enjoyment I get of trying to beat my power numbers, whatever it is, and that kind of feeling afterwards, it makes it all worthwhile. And you think, yeah, it's worth it. And you do it week in, week out, and you then question some of your motivations. But overall, it's you know, I enjoy the process, and that's why I keep doing what I do. I can't imagine trying to do a sport if you didn't enjoy it. It would be so mentally draining and tough, because it is hard. This is why it's elite level sports. You know, if it was easy, everyone could do it.
Yeah. Have you ever had a period in your career where the mental side of performance has got in your way, you know, of your training or your actual performance? Have you ever had a period of time, however short or long?
I guess I've had a couple of competitions where I've tried to overanalyze. This is more kind of bunch racing. And I've tried to overanalyze and ride, if you like, the perfect race. Right, this is my race plan. I'm going to attack the bunch here. I'm going to try and win these points here, or whatever it is. And then it starts going wrong in the race. And then rather than going, right, just let it go, move on, let's go back to basic principles, you get so caught up in the moment of, this was my plan and it's not working. And then you almost get kind of trapped, and then you just do nothing. And then it's an awful race, and you finish and go, well, that was pretty crap. And I went through a little kind of cycle of that, because then I would go to the next event and I was like, right, I'm not going to make the same mistakes again. I'm going to improve. I'm going to make sure that I don't do it. And then sort of said I would start, you know, the same process again. And then it can really easily become this kind of vicious cycle. And I kind of took a step back and went, right, go back to it. why do I do it? I do it because I enjoy it. Just go up, and the next race I'm just going to enjoy. And I did, and then the results started improving again, and I was like, yeah. And yeah, it was as simple as I was trying too hard effectively. And then once I kind of relaxed and went, just enjoy racing,
And
the
and
results started to improve again.
Yeah. So in that moment there where you're saying, you're trying too hard, how is that experienced for you in that moment? How does it? Because one of the key strategies and things that I like to do with athletes is literally get them to compare the difference between when they perform at their best and when they don't. And when that happens, the athletes are literally in a different trance state. It's a completely different state of mind where subconsciously the mind is representing what they're seeing, hearing, and feeling in their best performance in one way. And when they don't perform the way that they can do, subconsciously their mind is seeing and hearing and feeling something in a completely different way. And I'm just curious to know if you could describe how you feel differently or how you felt differently during that period of time.
I think that the easiest way to look at it was I was going into a race going, right, don't do this, don't do that, don't do the next thing. And I had this list of things that I didn't want to do. And then I'd start doing them and I'd be going, oh, flip, I said I didn't want to do it and I'm doing it. And then when things started going better, it was, right, I want to try and do this. And I changed it from don'ts to do's.
Yeah.
So rather than going in with kind of negative things that I was trying to avoid, I was going in with these kind of positive targets that I was trying to achieve. And I just flipped it on its head. And it was like, oh yeah, this works. And don't get me wrong, they were still not brilliant races, still made mistakes, still probably did some of the things that I, would have labeled don't do.
Yeah.
But because I was looking at it kind of from a different perspective and trying to give myself okay, right, that's not gone well, but try and do this. And I had this kind of positive target that I was trying to achieve. Worked for me.
Yeah, you've touched on something that I do spend a lot of time trying to get athletes to realize that, because unfortunately the mind can't process a don't. It's like saying, don't think of blue elephants, and don't look down as you're walking across the tightrope. The mind has to then subconsciously visualize the don't to then not do it. Yeah. So by trying to by telling yourself, and athletes telling themselves, don't do this, or don't miss this penalty, don't mess this up, you have to, in order to even process that statement, you have to visualize or bring into your mind the thing that you don't want to do. So you've hit the nail on the head there massively, where you have to channel your mind and tell it exactly what you want it to experience. What do I want to do? How is it going to look like? How do I want to feel when I'm performing out there? What's it going to sound like, inside my mind when you, especially for you, when you're going around that track? And imagine there's a certain sound that goes with just kind of flowing when you four are kind of in that streamlined position. And how do I want it exactly to be? And I think for anybody listening, what you said there is so powerful, in that, as I said, it's you have to channel your mind on what you want it to experience, and you get more out of what you ask for, as they say. And that certainly seemed like that was how you flipped it around there, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it didn't just happen overnight. It wasn't like a flick the switch, but it was a very simple change. And yeah, I still kind of whack on it, and it's still kind of my philosophy going forward. And I think it sounds so simple when you say, change don'ts to do's.
Yeah.
But it's so effective. It really is so effective. And then the other thing that I like to have a process. So, we've got a race schedule. We know what time we're going to race. And I have on my notes, my phone, what time the race starts, what time I'm going to walk over to the chairs, what time I get off the turbo, what time I'm going to get on the turbo, what time I'm going to have, caffeine, and that's what I do on every day, because when you get to race day, there's so many thoughts and other things and distractions. And it's really easy to fall into bad habits and do things badly. Whereas I just look at my kind of timesheet, and that's my process. And if I know it will get me through the day, it'll get me on the start line in the right place, in the right headspace. And all I do is I go back to my phone and I look, and that's my process. And it then means when I get on the start line, I know everything's right. I know my timings have been correct. I know that I've had the right amount of fuel, everything's in place. And I think, it's that kind of, you on a race day have a process, stick to it. And it might not be that the first process you write out is the one that works, but if you adapt it and change it, and then you've got a couple of things that you want to achieve in the race, your do's, you're not going to be a million miles away.
No, that just makes sense, just in terms of, again, the mind loves what's familiar. So if you can create a process, anybody out there listening who's doing whatever sport that you're taking part in, if you can create that process that you're going to follow before every single match or competition, you're creating this pattern of familiarity, so that no matter where you're going, and for you'll be in different countries, which is unfamiliar in that respect, but you can then bring in this familiar feeling and familiar pattern by mapping things out ahead of time, and that will help bring you into a more relaxed state, because you've got this process that's kind of anchoring you and centering you to how you're then going to go out and perform after it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is funny because I'll do the same warm up when I'm kind of training, like if I got to say turbo efforts at home, and I'll do a very similar warm up to my race warm up.
Yeah.
And yet the sensation of my legs is every time I do that race warm up at a certain power, my legs start going, oh, can't do this. And it's now got to the stage of, the first time it happens at an event, you go, oh shoot, this is not going to go well. And it's now at the stage of, I know exactly how my legs are going to feel in that warm up. I know at what power they're going to start going, ow, this really hurts. I know it's just a psychological thing. It's absolutely nothing to do with performance. It's more worrying when it doesn't, because you then go, shoot, my legs didn't hurt the way they normally do. What's wrong? But it is one of these things of, because I have done the same process for so many races now, I know exactly what it should feel like and what it does feel like. And it's almost reassuring. You're like, yeah, cool, my legs hurt. That's fine. Gonna go well.
Yeah. Have you ever had any kind of conflicting values or priorities? Obviously, you're spending. It has to be so much sacrifice to do what you have done and are doing. Has there ever been a time where that balance has become a challenge for you, and other things in your life have kind of wanted to come in and take over? Or
I think I've been pretty fortunate that I haven't experienced that too much. I think low level you can do, but because I went to university, I had the student lifestyle. I'll be honest, I wasn't a good student in the sense of studying and training. I went out socializing. I very much enjoyed the student lifestyle. Yeah. I'm very glad I was at university pre-COVID. I can't imagine how rubbish it is now. But I've had that kind of life. I've had that experience. I've had, getting home from the pub at whatever time and, rolling into bed and rolling out of bed an hour later trying to get to lectures. And I've had those kind of experiences, and I've lived a lot of my life already.
Yeah.
So it now means when I come to make these choices, and I don't like the word sacrifices, it's all choices. You know?
Yeah.
I choose to do it. No one's forcing me to do it. I choose to be an athlete. And there are times where I make choices because I know it's better for my performance. But part of me is going, I'd like to go and see my friends more. I'd like to, take my dog for a nice walk in the Peak District, whatever it is. And yeah, I know it's going to be detrimental to performance. And every so often I'll do it because I think actually mentally, psychologically, I need that change. I just need the fresh air, the freedom, the space, whatever it is, or to see people. But the majority of the time I'll go, no, it's not good for performance. I'll sit my backside and recover. But it's a choice that I make. But yeah, definitely there are sometimes I think I would quite like to just clock out being an athlete and do something different. But you have that thought for about 10 minutes and then it disappears.
Yeah.
Because I think that's one of the things a lot of people don't understand. If you're really into sport, you think, oh, it'd be great to be an athlete. I love going to my park run or five-a-side football or whatever it is, or, the weekend warrior on the bike, and think, oh, it'd be really good being a full-time cyclist and doing this full-time. But they then go to the pub at the weekend, or they go off for like a weekend in Venice or whatever it is. And it's like, yeah, but this is what athletes can't do. We can't just clock out of being an athlete for 48 hours to go and do what normal people do and then come back into an athlete, to being an athlete, because in that time window, you've missed training, you've not slept enough, you've not recovered, you've not stretched, you've not done whatever it is you need to do as an athlete. And that's the thing, it takes over your life. Yeah. What I do, the number of hours sleep I get tonight is going to affect the training that I do for the next week. And sometimes I will make that conscious decision of, I need to, go and see my friends or whatever it is. But a lot of the time it's, nope, off to my bed.
I'm so glad you've said what you said there, Neah, because I think, one of the biggest kind of game changers or deal breakers for the athletes who are striving to achieve the things that you have done and get to that level which is why I asked the question, is that you have to get your values, in order. You have to find out what's most important to you. And, with some of the people who I've worked with, sometimes, yes, on one hand, they want to achieve these things in sport. However, they're not making the right choices because there's another part of their life which is also important to them, that social side of life, and those two worlds are the antithesis to each other. Everything that you're doing over in that social side is only something that's going to get in the way of you achieving what you want over here, because it has, as you said there, like so many other knock-on effects. The lack of sleep, the lack of energy, that fatigue. And it won't just be for one day, it'll be for a few days. And obviously, whilst somebody's having to recover from going having a good social time, there's a bunch of people who's not done that, who's then getting further ahead of you.
Yeah, it's really difficult, especially I think for younger athletes who haven't lived life a bit, and maybe their pals have gone off to university and say, oh, you should come for a night out. And there is always going to be a huge temptation to do it. And I'm definitely not saying don't do it, but just be aware that if you do, it will have knock-on effects. And, most sports have off seasons, limit that to the off season, have a good blowout. And then when you turn to be an athlete, that's your life. That is everything. And if you want to succeed, then that's it. And I think the other thing is, athletes, depending on your sport, it's not going to be your whole life. It's not going to be, the next 40 years where you can't go out drinking with your mates. It might only be a year that you could be an athlete before something happens, or might be a couple of years. But if you want, if you really want it, you'll make the right choices. And I mean, everyone makes mistakes, but if you repeatedly make the same mistakes again and again, you can't blame anyone but yourself.
Definitely. The word commitment. Once you've committed to something, then you've got to go all in. And obviously, you still got to have that little bit of flexibility, but it's a big commitment, isn't it, to do what you are doing and do what you've done. And without that, you'll fall by the wayside, because there are people that are committed, that are going to do those things, aren't they?
Yeah, it's funny. You also hear about these kind of, I listen to kind of podcasts and things. I think so many people do. And it's, sporting heroes, and you hear about, this talented athlete, and they always did that extra rep, and they always stayed later in the gym and all this stuff. I think that's misinformation, because, if you've got a good training plan that you're sticking to, you shouldn't need to do the extras. But it's it's the consistency that they do it. And it's possibly by them staying late for the training, it's not the training that they're doing. It's probably because they're then not able to go out and socialize with their friends. It's other stuff that isn't, spoken about. It's them going to bed at 10 o'clock every night because they want a good sleep routine. That's probably more beneficial and what made them succeed, not the extra reps they do, or the extra late gym sessions. It's the choices that they make, and some of them are really unglamorous. As I said, it's stay in on a Friday night. It's not going out to the pub. It's being the antisocial one that says, no, sorry, I can't, guys, I've got my training session, or I need to recover for this, or you make the choices. And if you're not willing to put your sport first, then you're not going to reach your true potential.
No. Fantastic. Great advice, Neah. Thank you. What's your superpower? If you had a superpower, one thing that you do, and I'm sure there'll be more than one. What's one thing that really helps you do what you do? That's really helped you get to where you've got in sport, and it could be a physical thing in terms of how you perform on the bike or train, or a technical thing, or it could also be like a mental, psychological trait. What would your superpower be?
I mean, I'm not sure it's the one I'd pick, but I'm very good at not giving up. So if I've got training set, I will give absolutely everything to do it. If it's blowing a blizzard, I'll be out in that blizzard. If I feel awful, I will still try and do that interval set. And sometimes it's detrimental. Sometimes I'm trying to do intervals and I am so fatigued that the best thing to do is actually just go home and have a rest day. Mm-hmm. But I'm saying, no, the training says that I should be doing this. I'm going to be doing this. So yeah, I think it's the ability just to crack on, regardless of what it is. If I'm, if I have a target, I am going to do everything I can to achieve that. Awesome. Which, yeah, it's not the most glamorous one.
It's a very important one.
That's my superhero.
Too many people quit too early. They think they know their limit and they've not even scratched it.
Yeah, you just got to keep plodding away.
You've got to test yourself. You've got to find out where your limits are, and once you've pushed those boundaries, pushed those limits, then you begin to know how far you can actually take it. And then it becomes, the question of, are you prepared to keep going to what you know is your own limit, or do you kid yourself? Do you cut those corners when deep down you know you've got more, and in the end that does then tell it in the end product, doesn't it? In the end result, when you're going out in these big competitions, it shows up then when you've just been 10-20% off, over time, I'd imagine. Yeah,
I think the other thing that's so important is the consistency of training, and it shows over time. If you've flaked on a couple of sessions, you're not going to notice after a month, but if you're consistently doing that, it is going to show, and it is going to have a huge effect. Yeah. And yeah, so as I said, my stubbornness.
Brilliant.
So glamorous.
No, it is. Well, that's the way that it is, isn't it? And I think one of the great things that's coming out from this interview with you is, I feel like you've given a really great insight into the reality of it. It does look amazing when you're on TV and you're getting your medal around your neck and the flags around your shoulders and everybody's cheering, but there is such a long hidden process behind all of that, isn't there? Absolutely.
And I think, youngsters, when they go, right, I want to be a sports person, whatever it is, they see the glory moments on the telly, 10 minutes or an hour of sport or whatever it is, and then the medal ceremony, and they think, yeah, that looks great, that's amazing. And then they see, maybe interviews and stuff afterwards, and it looks glamorous, and it looks, it looks like such an amazing lifestyle. And the reality is, it is amazing. Like, don't get me wrong, I love being a full-time athlete. I really do think it is such a privilege, but it isn't glamorous. It isn't easy. There are days where you think, why am I doing this? But that's true of any job. Yeah. But ultimately, I enjoy it, and that's what sees me through. And I think, you said sacrifice, I said choices. Yeah, it is about that. There are hard choices that you have to make, and sometimes it's forced upon you. Selection, we kind of not even mention that side of things. It can be awfully difficult if you think you've given everything and then you're not selected to compete. It's a terrible place to be. But I think to kind of aspiring sports people, if you like, don't be put off, but go in with your eyes open. Yeah. You can't do everything of life. If you want to go out and enjoy your social life, you can't be an athlete. Well, I mean, I guess it depends on your sports. I think snowboarders have a pretty good lifestyle. But yeah, probably going to get all the hate from them. I'm sure they train very hard. But I think it's all about kind of balance and perspective, and being honest with yourself of why you're doing it. Are you doing it because it looks glamorous and you want to be seen on TV and you just want to pick up the medal? Or do you actually enjoy the process and the work and what it takes to get there?
Awesome. What advice would you give to your former younger self? So if you could go with you've gained all this wisdom, all this knowledge, all these experiences in your years of life so far, if you could go back in time and pass on some wisdom to a younger version of yourself that would help them progress and maybe a little bit faster, or just give something that you needed to hear when you was younger that would help you, what advice would this be?
Well, I guess there's two levels of, there's the level of when I was at university, I'd say don't go out drinking as much, be better at time management. Yeah, I think consistency is key, and enjoying it. If you're trying to train and you don't enjoy the session you're doing, it's not the right session, if that makes sense. You need to know, you need to have a purpose, you need to have a goal. You need short-term goals and long-term goals. And if you have that, there's no holding you back. It's very easy to get lost in, if you've got too many short-term goals, you're not going to achieve the long-term goals. And if you've only got a long-term goal, it's too daunting. Yeah. So it's kind of getting that fine balance of things, give yourself something to achieve that is achievable in the short term, but have that long-term aspiration. And it's gonna, I see it as stepping stones to get out of the mountain.
Awesome. Great advice. How has I mean, obviously you're still right in the midst of your career. How has sport helped you outside of sport? In your life away from it, family, friends, these types of things. How has what you've experienced and learned so far within your sport? How has it helped you in other areas?
I guess I'll probably know better when I finish sport, but I think it's it makes you quite well-rounded. I get to travel, mix with different people, experience different things, and it gives you kind of different life perspective, different challenges, different focuses. And I would almost say the flip side of it's so easy to get caught up in sport and think that it's my whole world. And then you take a step back and go, actually, it really isn't. There's so much more to life than sport, but it's such a nice bubble to live in. And I come back to reality every so often and I'm like, nope, back into my sport bubble.
That's too boring.
Yeah. But I just enjoy the challenge of it. And I almost see it a little bit as a kind of puzzle of you working in different elements, different kind of physiologies, trying to improve different things, whether it's technical or whatever it is. And it's trying to put them all together on a given day. There's nothing, I've not found anything else in life that has the same challenges.
Awesome. Last question for you then, Neah. What's your definition or meaning of excellence? What is excellence to you?
I would say it's something that you aspire for. I would like to say that you never quite achieve it, because then what?
Yeah.
You know, I think it's this kind of, it's something that we're all aspiring to be. We're aspiring to be excellent at something. For me, it's sport and cycling. For someone else, it might be, excellence at chess, cooking. It could be anything in life. Yeah. But it's this kind of, is where you're trying to get. But I would say it's a journey to get to being excellent. So that's a very long-winded, waffly answer.
No, I really like what you said. That I can't remember the exact words, but you said there it's something that you set yourself that you don't actually achieve, and I really like that. I set myself targets, and as you said, I set short, medium, and long terms, and I set myself some pretty big ones, which I may never ever achieve. However, it gives me, a lot of drive and determination in trying to figure the things out that might help me get to achieve these things that I want to do. And I'm okay with, not necessarily being able to get that big goal right at the end of it, but I'm more than willing to go through that process over the next however many years of trying to do it. As you said a few times, that process, I like the challenge of going for something, of stretching myself, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and we only get one shot on this planet, and we've got to test ourselves to see actually what we're capable of. And I think all too often people just kind of keep themselves in this nice, comfortable box where everything is safe and they know what they're going to do. But sometimes you've got to dare to go out of that, to really find out what life has in hold for you. So I'm all for setting almost unachievable challenges, Neah, definitely.
Yeah, aspirational.
Well, I just want to, wrap up this interview now and just say thank you so much for coming on and giving up your time. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Really. Found it so interesting listening to how you go about dealing with the challenges of getting yourself into the physical and mental shape to go and do what you do. And I think what you've also given myself and the audience is this, the opportunity to kind of look at sport from an angle where we from the outside don't normally get to see, those sacrifices that you're having to make, the things that you can't do, all because you've been able to, as you said, not sacrifice, all because you've been able to make the right choices based on what's most important to you, which is being the best cyclist you can be. Yeah,
well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I've had a good time too. So thank you very much.
That's great. Well, thank you very much, Neah, and all the best for the future. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
The Inner Game Podcast. Brought to you by the Science of Excellence. Unleash your power. Book your free consultation now.